All right. Well, it looks like we're at time, so we should probably get started. Hello, welcome everyone to our presentation today, From Stacks to Skills, How Libraries Are Driving Student Engagement and Workforce Readiness. I'm going to let my panel introduce themselves. Steve?
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Rakuzik, and I'm the Social Sciences Librarian at Florida Gulf Coast University.
Hi, my name is Melissa Gonzalez. I am a Humanities and Social Sciences reference librarian and collection development coordinator at the University of West Florida.
And my name's Ken Bauer. I'm an associate professor of computing science and cybersecurity and software engineering at the Tecnológico de Monterrey in Guadalajara, Mexico.
All right. Thank you guys for being here with us today. We have a pretty exciting set of questions, so let's get into it. So I just wanted to start by sharing some of the insights from the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs 2025 report. If you're not familiar, this is a report released annually that focuses on the forces driving labor markets around the world. From the report this year, I quote, "According to employer expectations for the evolution of skills in the next 5 years, technological skills are projected to grow in importance more rapidly than any other type of skills. Among these, AI, AI and big data top the list as the fastest growing skills, followed closely by networks, sorry, I gotta find my place, and cybersecurity and technological literacy. Complementing these technological skills, creative thinking and two socio-emotional attitudes, resilience, flexibility, and agility, along with curiosity and lifelong learning, are also seen as rising in importance." And so with that, we're going to get into our questions and explore these topics with our panel today. So to begin with, I would like to pose the question, is career preparation a primary focus of student outcomes at your institution? And do the trends in this report align with your institution's priorities? Steve, let's start with you.
All right, thank you. Yes. In fact, just this year, Florida Gulf Coast University launched its latest quality enhancement plan titled The Skills Advantage from Campus to Career. And as stated on the website, this plan aims to help undergraduate students develop career-relevant general skills like critical thinking, teamwork, or communication, and share these skill sets with employers for better job market outcomes. Now, that little description that I just read didn't specifically mention technological skills, but they are also included in this. Within this plan, FGCU offers badges in transferable skills, including communication technology and data literacy. So most definitely, our university is involved in training for skills.
And like Steve, I'm at another Florida institution. The first strategic direction in our newly launched strategic plan is to provide high-impact educational and co-curricular learning experiences that inspire, engage, and prepare students to become knowledgeable citizens and successful in their careers and lives. And then our QEP it's called Reflect to Connect, and it focuses on critical reflection across high-impact practices to empower students to make connections between their varied learning experiences and real-world applications. So.
All right, and then moving on, this is going to be for Ken. We all agreed that the soft skills mentioned in this report, creative thinking, resilience, flexibility, that these weren't surprising. So would you like to speak to these skills as they relate to your work as a professor?
So I definitely address this with my students, and I start talking with my students that I don't see these as soft skills. I see them as hard skills. Because for my computer nerd students, including me, these tend to be the hard skills for them to deal with, is interacting socially with colleagues and clients as well. So I've always had a hard time dealing with being the introvert in the room, and most of my students are that as well. And I attract that kind of students to my area. A bit of background, I'm a software engineer, and when I worked at IBM way back in the 90s, we did a lot of distributed collaborative software development. So this is 1990s, this is back a little bit from the Zoom days that we went through with the pandemic right now. And I worked with people across the globe in France, Australia, and other locations doing drops over the 90s. So I knew that distance collaborative education or distance collaborative work is really, really important for my engineers. So I've been teaching them a lot. I push tools on them to improve their communication. In fact, my doctoral research was about that topic of best practices for software development at a distance. And so I do a lot of work with that. There was an excellent article back in pandemic by Tanis Morgan, one of my colleagues. She's up in British Columbia, talking about the 4 channels of communication we have to have with students as professors and faculty. One of them is content to student. The second one is from the professor to the student. You also have to enable the other direction of student to the professor. And then one thing that's really important that sometimes we assume is that students have the skills to work together. And I found that that's not true. And we have to enable that and make the arrangements for them to be able to do that kind of communication. So I think learning those skills, sometimes we assume they have them, and we got to do a lot of work to help them along that path.
All right, thank you, Ken. So let's talk about what are students and faculty's expectations around building these skills. Are the students expected to develop them on their own? Are they included as part of coursework, or are there resources at the library and or institutional level that they can make use of? Steve, did you want to go first?
Yeah, there are expectations around building these skills. Faculty are encouraged to embed badgeable assignments in their courses, and the university offers a self-training course and workshops to help them do so, to help the faculty do this. To my knowledge, the library is not explicitly mentioned in this program, but I would hope that the use of the library is incorporated into many of these badgeable assignments.
I expect it's probably a combination of both. We have an institutional subscription to LinkedIn Learning, and I know at least of some College of Business faculty that have students complete some of those different courses as part of their coursework. On the library side, we don't have anything official. We're currently in the planning stages to offer some open workshops related to AI. But when you have these open workshops, you know, people don't always come. So, and then there's been a few new undergraduate certificates. There's one on AI in the workplace, and another one about something about data analytics or data analysis in the workplace or something like that. So they're trying to put a lot of focus on it.
All right, and building off of that, let's discuss how students are actually preparing for the job market and what resources they may or may not be using. So let's talk about if your institutions offer any formal programs around upskilling or refining their skills in technology. You know what, Ken, why don't we start with you? Because Steve and Melissa just got a turn.
All right, I'll let them breathe here. Deal with my introvertedness skill. So I actually checked this morning. Melissa was talking about LinkedIn Learning, and we don't have a subscription to that, but we did back when it was called lynda.com. I don't know if anyone remembers that. But we do have many resources available in our digital library. And since I'm definitely the outsider here, being a software engineering professor in a room of librarians, a message for my colleagues that are librarians is that most of the staff and the students are really not aware of what's available. It's the truth, and you really need to know that. And I know you're going to say, but we sent all those memos and all those courses, and I get it. I'm a real big believer in handholding. I've given a lot of educational courses, especially on digital tools, to faculty over the years. The pandemic, I was ridiculously busy about this. But I found when I was working with professors and educators on digital technology is, number one, teachers are the worst students by far. It's just a fact of life. And the other thing is that 10 minutes over coffee, holding someone's hand and teaching them to use a new tool, working with a nerd like me that's been using computing since the 1980s, has way more value than hours and hours and hours of courses and memos and other communication. So I found that's really important. In terms of working with my students, my big push really is through assigned material, indirectly teaching them to build their own bookshelf. So we use O'Reilly. O'Reilly asked me to give a talk for them in the summer. Actually, Clarivate gave me a talk about O'Reilly, and I give it in Spanish and English, by the way, if you want to watch that in Spanish. And I've been using O'Reilly resources since the 90s, so I was an obvious user of using their tools because I'm a nerd and I liked their computer books back in the 1990s and even before. And one thing I've done with my students is teach them that they need to develop their own paths for learning after they graduate, especially in computing. You'll become a dinosaur in 2 or 3 years if you stop learning. And they need to learn how to do their own pathway of learning, and using tools where you can build up your own resources of what you can do to continue learning is really important for me with my work with my students.
At UWF, I mentioned we have LinkedIn Learning, and we offer those undergraduate certificate programs that support those kind of skills, like specifically the AI in the workplace and data in the workplace for undergraduates. And then we do have grad certificates in data science and cybersecurity. There's an AI and data analytics student group. It's not really a club, but it's faculty sponsored. And we have a pretty award-winning Center for Cybersecurity at UWF, and like they recently held a day-long workshop on prompt engineering that we were all invited to participate in if we wanted to. And just to kind of follow up on what you said, one of the things when I'm teaching library instruction and information literacy is, I try to kind of hammer on about these things being transferable skills, that if you learn how to work this one database, you can work most databases. They might look a little different. It might say go instead of search, and it might be on the right instead of the left. But if you kind of understand the sort of general concept, then in general, you can work most of those kinds of databases.
All right. Yeah, so FGCU also has an institutional subscription to LinkedIn Learning. They do have the program I mentioned before that has these courses in communication technology and data literacy where, the students can receive badges. As far as the library, we also have some resources that I'm sure many institutions have through the library, like we have the Jove Unlimited, which provides videos on science skills. We have Sage Business Skills, which offers courses on various business skills, ranging from the technical to the so-called soft skills. So it could be interpreting business data or something like teamwork. But yeah, to kind of reiterate what's been said, though, I don't know how often these get used. I mean, they're just there. And if no one is pushing the students to use these, I don't know if someone's just going to stumble upon them and say, wow, I'm going to go take this course. So there is that issue. But another thing I'll reiterate too is that, yeah, obviously the technology moves so fast, the specifics are going to change from year to year. I think the more important thing is to just generally for students to learn that they do need to they're going to always be interacting with technology in one form or another. So whether or not it isn't about training them to know the exact thing you do with this piece of technology, but it's just to familiarize themselves, familiarize them with the idea that this is something that they're always going to be dealing with, and just to kind of have comfort with always kind of learning new tech skills.
All right. And so let's talk about how are students using resources at your institutions? Are they using ebooks, videos, AI tools, combinations of those, something else? And is the reality any different than what you might expect? Steve, why don't we stick with you since you have the mic?
All right. Yeah, they're definitely using all of the above, all those things you mentioned. But with the exception of AI tools, these are all, we're pretty familiar. None of this is very new other than the AI tools. I would say, though, for me, still the most common thing I'm asked for assistance with is helping students find peer-reviewed journal articles. So this is still, and then that's not necessarily even something you would think of as a career skill unless you were going to go into academia or certain other research fields where that's part of it. But that is still, I would say, the number one thing throughout my career as a librarian that, I have to help students with.
Yeah, my response mirrors Steve's. I agree that students, they do need to know how to find peer-reviewed sources in their college courses and career and college career. But I attended a webinar recently. Ohio State has a certificate in information literacy, and they have this series of webinars. It's free, so anybody can do it. And anyway, one of them was about outdated research notions, and one of the outdated research notions they talked about was peer-reviewed articles. Now, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's an outdated research notion, but it did get me thinking more about, yeah, you're right. When students leave, unless they're going into academia or they maybe if they work in the health field, they'll have a medical library that has medical resources, but most of them won't have access to these types of things, to these, databases, that these paywall databases. Now, so, we do teach about, that a lot of these things are, you have a lot of open access materials now. And I've always taught Google Scholar kind of as if it was another database, in that context. But now I've been thinking more and putting more effort into teaching them about using Google Scholar to find that great literature, the things they will be able to access freely after they are outside of, the university.
Out in the real world. And building off of this, Ken, what types of resources are you using in your courses to help with skill development, and what do you find resonates most with students?
So I've always been known in my 30 years teaching at the Tec de Monterrey as an open source, I was going to say advocate, but probably zealot is probably the better thing. And I was using Linux when people still thought it was a toy, and now we walk around with Android phones with Linux on it today. So I've always been a big believer in open source, open educational resources, and in particular, open pedagogy. I push my students to become more producers and less consumers. I want them writing blogs. And it's funny to say blogs because I was talking to my students and they're like, what's a blog? and television's going to change education, right? MOOCs are going to change education. AI is going to change education. I actually asked my students if they knew what a MOOC was, and they don't know. They don't know. And it was going to change education 15 years ago, right? So I push them to write on their own blogs, and they're engineers, and they say, but I don't know how to write. And I said, well, that's why I want you to learn how to write. And I harness old tools like just last week I was showing them how to use an RSS reader, either something like InnoReader or Feedly or Google Reader, but they killed it. And the reason, again, is back to what I was saying, is they need to curate their own set of resources for their own educational journey going forward. So I've been talking to them a lot about that kind of thing, about using these tools to move forward as professionals, and then also increasing their professional network. For me, I have stories, and my students always remember the stories I tell them. They write that on academic awards 20 years later from alumni. They don't say, what a great exam he wrote, when I remember that one, but the stories from the field. And so I tell them, you need to be a volunteer at conferences like this. And that's how I met a lot of people, was being a volunteer as a student at conferences, and then I kept going to the conference, and then I helped organize the conference, and then I met all these famous people that I can invite to my classrooms. Super important for them to do that and grow their professional network, or pushing them to update their profile on LinkedIn is another thing I really want to push them to use these tools to grow their networks, to keep working toward things.
All right. And now let's also talk about the assumption that students should know how to use technology because they're digital natives. I'm sure we've all heard this kind of theory before. If you're born after a certain year, you're a digital native. So you're just going to magically, through osmosis, know how to use something like Microsoft Excel. But I want to ask these guys, do you think that this is the case for students? And if not, what are technologies that you find students are most in need of training in? Any particular software, apps, features, tools, and is it surprising to you in any way?
I find digital natives, and I'm thinking in particular of my two high school age daughters, they're quite tech savvy with the devices themselves, the sort of hardware. but they still need those critical thinking skills to be, but they don't know they do, or they don't think they do. They're like, oh, mom. But to be able to use them efficiently, it's kind of like with the whole prompt engineering. You can use AI tools, generative AI tools, they can come in really handy if you kind of know how to have the conversation. And so they know how to do things, but they don't necessarily think, oh, they don't think about it as transferable skills, or that why, maybe if I try this, they just kind of just do it.
Yeah, I certainly find that the digital native idea is a myth to a large extent. I would go even further than saying that they don't have the critical thinking skills to go along with it. That there are many just truly tech skills that they don't have at all. I mean, they don't know how to attach a file to an email. They don't know how to download an article to their device. They know the things they know. They know how to do the things that, whatever, for entertainment purposes, for communicating with their friends, or whatever it is, just like anyone, the things you do on a regular basis, of course you end up getting to know that stuff real well. But some of these other things, it's very foreign to them. And oddly enough, the old people like me, we seem to be better at it because we kind of grew up when all this was new. And now, with today's apps, everything is so easy. It's almost like you don't need to know anything about technology. It's just kind of magic in your hand there.
So I met Mark Krunsky about 10 years ago at a conference, and I wouldn't call it an argument, but I don't like the word digital natives, because being a native doesn't make you literate. As someone who lives in Mexico, and my use of Spanish is different than my students. Actually, they tell me I talk like a student because I hang out with 20-year-olds all day. But it's like bicycle riding. You can ride a bike, but you're not a racer. You can eat food, but it doesn't mean you're an accomplished chef, right? And so, again, it comes back to needing more creators instead of just consumers of these tools. And I think it's really important that we don't assume that our students know the way we use the tools the same, because I grew up in the 1970s and 80s using computers, and my file system is very organized of teaching, semester, course, and it goes back to 1990 as I can find my documents. Whereas my daughter, just everything's wherever the heck it is on the computer, because she saves it and then she searches for it. And that's okay. That's the way they're using the computing. It's not the way that we're used to using the computing. But I think it's really important as educators, we adapt to the way our students from a different generation are using these tools, and help them, guide them in better ways of using them themselves.
All right. And guys, do you have any suggestions for helping students to be aware of the technologies available to them?
This is that ever-present conundrum, right? No matter how many times, we promote or advertise or send an email, there are always going to be those that say, oh, I didn't know y'all did that, or I didn't know about that. I feel like my best success has been in an instruction session in the classroom, when I've been able to introduce or talk about something, within that session. But then that requires the time and support of the faculty member. So it's not always in our control. You may only have 20 minutes of the faculty member may only give you 20 minutes of their class time because they have other things to do. But even like with the AI thing, just telling students, oh, AI can lie to you. Now I have a slide where I show an example of something I prompted, and with the answer that's a lie. And so showing them, because it just seems like you can tell them and they're just like, okay. But if they see something, maybe they'll be a little more spongy.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to that. It's always been difficult to do this. Emails don't seem to work. Nothing seems to work. I find that, I find myself saying this so often, but with so many, like, for example, library resources, we need buy-in from the teaching faculty, and they need to incorporate that into the assignments. Because otherwise no one's just gonna stumble on, all libraries now, you have the huge, like, database lists, A to Z list, 400 databases, 800 databases. No one's just going to stumble onto those and go, oh, let me check out this one for fun. They're going to have to, in some way, be assigned it. Yeah, they need their handheld, but they also need to have a reason to want to use it in the first place.
I'll answer that. Those faculty members, yeah, sure. So I'll go back to my 1970s memories of doing show and tell or show and share. And actually that's what I do a lot with my students is I do a lot of activities in class, whether it was over online or in person, of assigning a team to work on research of some new tool or technology that we're using in my classroom for software development or cybersecurity. And I'll use the, I'll just throw up a Google Slides, and I'll create one slide for each team. And then they get creative and they go, oh, I could make another slide, and we can have 2 slides for my team now. And I love this because, one, it's open pedagogy, and I'm a big fan of open pedagogy, but it's also that team that didn't listen to the instructions, which always happens. It happened to us this morning in the first timer session, including me. They can see, oh, I see what they're doing over there on their slides, so now I know what's going on and I can work on it. And then they share with what they found with the rest of the class. So I like using that kind of activity in my classroom. And even teaching master's level students cybersecurity, when we send students to do that and we have conversations with our students, I find out about tools I don't know about, because we get set in our ways and we're using the tools we've always used. And when I ask students to go and research something that they can bring back to share with the class, it turns out they're teaching me as well. And having myself show them that we're still learning at 56 years old means they're going to have to keep learning for the rest of their life as well.
Something that just occurs to me when we talked about the digital natives before. Some of our newest and youngest faculty are digital natives, and so sometimes it's that whole they know what they know, and they don't necessarily. It used to be like, oh, it's the old faculty, you have to convince them of why you need to do this. Well, now I'm the old guy. But yeah, sometimes the newer faculty, they think, oh, I'm teaching that already in the class, and maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But
all right. Well, I do have a few more questions I could ask, but we are at a good point to pause and open up the floor for Q&A if anyone has any questions. So I do want to make sure we have enough time for that kind of engagement. So please raise your hands if you have something you'd like to ask the panel. Yeah, and we do have a volunteer here with a microphone.
Hi, so I'm Delaney. I work at Olin College of Engineering in Boston. And our students are amazing at the tech stuff, but the soft skills, they need a little bit more support with, especially like teamwork and working together and being able to communicate with people, because it's a school of only engineers. Do you have any recommendations for how the library can help support them in that?
She said library.
yeah, really. I don't necessarily really, these are the kinds of things I try to sneak in, in instruction sessions when I have, and in particular, I work with social science and humanities, so I'm not even talking to the engineering students really. Yeah, it's hard. But of course, I mentioned earlier, our QEP focuses on high impact practices, and a lot of those high impact practices are these sort of workforce readiness skills and things like that. And we do have a fair amount of courses throughout the campus that are either HIP certified, or whatever whatever they have to go through to sort of get this sort of indication that this class is an HIP certified class. So they're doing that, and I know there just evidence of anecdotal evidence from seeing in the library. There's a lot of group work, but I also teach. The librarians, we kind of rotate teaching the capstone research course for our Bachelor of General Studies, and it's amazing to me that you think, okay, you're going to be in this group, and you think by now, and then they're graduating seniors in most cases, that they've had to do a group project before, and we still get well, this person won't do their part, or this person won't respond to the email, and it's just like, well, I don't know what else I can do. We have a career services, unit on campus. Some of those soft skills are hard through the library in terms of like the teamwork things. I mean, you can have them do teamwork exercises in library instruction classes, but like I said, even that time is a commodity. So my instinctual sort of response would be, if I were in that situation, I would talk with the instructor and try to come up with something we could do in a session that might kind of bridge that.
I don't have too much to add, but I feel I should, basically, since I gave the microphone to you, and I want to feel like I'm not completely dodging this. But no, I don't have great ideas. I mean, I kind of feel the same way Melissa does. And maybe this is a cop-out, but I guess I've always thought that those are the kind of skills that aren't really taught in a conventional way. I just think that throughout life, there are various things you're going to have to do. And so if it's, just to get through one day on campus, I would hope students need to learn how to talk to different people and approach different people, and how to ask someone, for assistance or whatever. Maybe I'm naive. Maybe we are at a point where this needs to be more explicitly taught. But I guess I just thought, these are the sorts of things that emerge out of everyday interactions.
So I was just actually saying to Melissa and Steve that it's really interesting always to start at the beginning of an event. I've been keynote sessions, and I like being at the end because then I can get the vibe of the conference before I have to talk to 500 people. But I'm happy to share with anyone's interest. At the Tech de Monterey, we've done a lot of changes to our curriculum system. We're no longer teaching, say, 6 classes each semester for the 9 semesters, and then you're chunked into your courses. I teach groups in 3rd year in the fall, and then the spring session. In the spring, they have 1 course for the whole semester. It's 24 hours of instruction a week with about 5 or 6 different faculty, and they're all working in teams with an education partner. The 6 semesters course is with Oracle. They're just down the block from us. And they work in a team the entire semester, no other courses. It's basically a full-time job. It's an internship guided by myself and other instructors, and then I set them up with the tools to make sure they're communicating and work with the education partner, and that does wonders. And I'd love to talk to other people about it, because the Tech de Monterey, we've had the luxury that we were able to do this because, there's no unions involved for us teachers or anything. And the administration say, we're doing this, and we do it, and we're a large institution. And I see amazing results in terms of building up those skills, because they have to do it as part of a project for the 2 semesters that I work with them. And like Steve said, you can't really do that if this is my course and then I have my other courses to deal with every semester or trimester or whatever you're doing. It's so artificial to have a project that's just a tiny part of 1 semester. We dream about multi-semester projects and ongoing things, but we can never make it happen as faculty. So I've got a lot of experience working on that with my students, and I think it's really, really important that they learn these skills. But in a traditional environment, I don't know if we can do it.
Thank you.
I'll add one thing, because I just was thinking that, do y'all have courses at your school for like writing in STEM or things like that? Because we do have a few of those, because I think it is different. I mean, you can't, of course, all students are supposed to take the gen ed and the English comp, but teaching one person, so it's writing within the disciplines or communicating within the disciplines. And so if there could be something like that, not that the library would necessarily have a role, or maybe they could, I'm not sure. But I think when you gear it towards students who have all this technical knowledge but need help with the soft skills, specifically designed for that, scientific audience.
All right. Thank you. That was a great question. Anybody else?